Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We are still with Jeff here. We're gonna have a little bit of a deeper conversation on leadership, how we better apply it, how we better not only improve emergency management, but also the emergency management practitioner with leadership. Jeff himself is a tremendous leader. He's got a lot of experience, which we've talked about, coming from military, going into fire, into EM, and also law enforcement now with his credentialing and building of his program. But more than that, he is leading an effort when it comes to tribal relations, and he works with he's mentioned it in the podcast, and we'll talk about that a little more. But he works with DC on building policy. He sits on as the vice chair of the Intertribal Emergency Management Coalition. He was on the International Association of Emergency Managers tribal committee. He is a member of the IAEM himself as a certified emergency manager, and he just ultimately is a leader that people look to. He brings leadership to the table, but I want to talk to him about not only how he applies it, but the leadership that we need in building emergency management to be the profession it needs to be, but more so to make the individual emergency manager the professional they need to be as it comes to emergency management. So Jeff, let's dive right into how do we get, as emergency managers, we don't necessarily sit in positions of authority, so we have to be people of influence. Influence is leadership is basically influence at every realm, and we have to learn to lead at 360 degrees. So how do you best, what kind of advice do you give someone to best be the best leader they can be when they're not necessarily in a position of authority?
So I think for me, the biggest thing is always being a student. If you understand the different leadership styles, you can understand the power of each of those leadership styles, whether that is, autocratic, where, and I would use the example on the scene of an emergency. I'm known by the folks around the nation. I'm a no nonsense person when we're on scene, and I will give the briefings and get it done, and let's get out there and do what we need to. Or if it's an influential power leadership, ultimately just understanding those different styles, I think allows us to implement them at different times of our career or different situations within our career. And to do that, you've got to study. You've got to be a student of the practice. Emergency management for a long time, the conversation has kind of revolved around: are we a career or are we a job function? And ultimately, I think if we are going to get to the point where we are an industry and we are a career, that we have to have leaders in place that fully understand the scope of what they can and should do. Like you said, not always being correctly positioned within an organizational hierarchy. It does take a little bit of an influential type leader to get the message across to those decision makers. So, within the tribe, we have chief, assistant chief, and then we have our tribal council. Getting them, they'll never probably understand all the facets of emergency management, and that's fine. That's not their job. But as the person leading that effort, you've got to be able to communicate that with them. And if that is needing people, or if that is needing a particular, I'll call it a structural resource, getting them to understand the need, and understanding the cost, understanding the benefit of what this will bring to the table. It's an art, ultimately. And so truly going back to kind of how I opened that, but being a student will help you to understand that art and get to where you need to within your program.
I really like that, the way you describe it as being an art. I describe it as being a skill. But being an art, everybody has their own technique. They have their own, the colors that they use, and the way they apply it, and the whatever textures they want to use. Everybody, it's all different. in our application, it could be it can be molded to fit who we are, but it's the active molding and it's the active practice of doing it. It's not, for me, I have this argument with people that just because you are promoted to a certain position doesn't make you a leader. If you have a authority by position does not make you a leader. Being able to lead somebody, influence somebody, and really shift people in their thinking requires, it's a skill of communication. It's a skill of knowing when and when to talk, when to not. It's a skill of knowing when to lead by example, when to lead with the directive. It's actually a skill. I love the use of the word art. I'm gonna steal that from you because it is absolutely an art, and everybody is their own artist and has their own way of applying it. But it has to be actively applied, and it has to be actively studied, and it has to be honed. It's one of those things that you can't lead today and then not lead for 2 years, and all of a sudden you lead every day. You make an active decision to be that person of influence, and in doing so, whatever you're working with, however you're applying that leadership, whether it's in emergency management or something else, but leadership in general it's an activity that you have to actively do consistently in order to get really good at it. Communication and influence don't just happen. Some people are really good at talking and being in front of people all the time. Doesn't necessarily mean they're a leader, but having that art to be able to apply it and really give people what they need in the moments that they need it is very important with leadership. But I want to bring it to a higher function. When you said, is it a job capacity, job function, or is it a career field? I've been using the word profession there, but it's important that, for me anyway, to get across that a lot of the leadership that's going to take place, a lot of the change that's really going to take place isn't going to happen at high levels of government or associations. It's going to happen from me and you, the individual doing the job that steps up and makes the change happen. And we do that by working together, collaborating, networking, partnering. But it has to come from us. I mean, we have to be the voice of what it is that we do, why we do it, why it's important, and how we grow, not only as a profession, but as a professional doing the job. So where's your stance on that?
Well, 100% agree. I think what it's going to take is really a paradigm shift within the field of emergency management, and it's going to take transformational leadership to do that. And to your point about communication, if you are going to transform the industry, if you are going to make that change within emergency management or any leadership field, for that matter, you've got to be able to be a transformative individual. You've got to be able to communicate the need. You've got to be able to communicate with the decision makers of the organization. And so, yeah, 100% agree with you. It has to start here. I know a lot of people look to FEMA to drive what emergency management looks like, but I can tell you right now that I deal with a lot of tribes and with my own tribe, that one organization to the other is never going to be the same. And waiting on some top level kind of organization like FEMA to drive that change, it's never going to happen. It's going to take the people that are at the ground level doing the job, and being transformative in the way they approach things, having a strategic vision for where they're going, and understanding what are those key objectives I've got to hit to be able to get to that point. That's what's going to change it, and we're going to see the professionalism or the professionalization of the industry. So
the professionalization of the industry is a big part of it there, and it comes from there's really no universal application of emergency management. Its description, its definition, even job titles, organizational application, where they sit. It's really all over the place, and that's going to come to us speaking up in our organization and saying, this is what's really important. But one of the things that I've been really hoping that I'm getting across in what it is that I'm doing is that it's important because we are seeing more positions open up at higher levels that are recruiting vice presidents of emergency management, executive directors of emergency management. Not only were you going to be at the table, you're going to be able to influence emergency management and the organization in which you sit. And we need to be ready to fill those roles when they come available. There's a lot of people out there practicing emergency management who I would not hire because I don't feel they're qualified for the job in which they sit. And so how do we build the professional to meet the professional standard we're hoping to achieve?
So one, I think every every state, every tribe, every territory needs to look at what are their requirements for that role. Specifically, I look at some states, and I hate to say it this way, but the requirement to be an emergency manager is a high school diploma, and you you can breathe. I mean, like there's no education requirement, there's no certification requirement, there's no even an online FEMA independent study course requirement for certain positions. So I think everyone needs to probably look at those requirement levels as a starting point. But beyond that, I think people have to be willing to take a step outside of their comfort zone and put themselves into the classwork to learn. You talked about the Executive Academy that we went through. Great opportunity, but you don't have to necessarily jump to that level immediately, right? There are education paths that are free that an individual can go and do and get a very sound base knowledge or base of the practice of emergency management. So stepping outside just because it's comfortable sitting in the office and kind of do the things that are required of me, blah 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 blah. Step outside of that comfort zone and force yourself to meet people and maybe you don't like education, but sometimes we got to be uncomfortable to learn. And I think getting out and learning at every opportunity you can, and I know that sometimes that's hard with everything that you've got going on versus an opportunity that comes up. But we've got to make that leap toward educationally professionalizing the individual, and hopefully that will in turn have a long-term impact on the profession. That and you see young people coming out of colleges now with degrees in emergency management or degrees in homeland security and those kind of things, and that's great. But I think those individuals still need to get out there and learn from the folks that have been doing it for a while. For me, when I took on the role, I went to another gentleman with the Citizen Potawatomi, and he's been my mentor basically from day one. He took me under his wing, and I learned a lot. He learned a lot from me, and we've both been able to improve our programs. So taking those opportunities to just educate yourself, whether that's in a formal setting or from somebody who's been in the field for a while, that's going to get us there to where we've got stronger leaders that are ready to move into those executive positions.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's one of the areas that I hope I'm hounding on when it comes to filling the position. I mean, and that's how I came into being an emergency manager. Is I filled a need. I filled the position based on the need that was found, and didn't know what emergency management was, and took the steps to get educated on emergency management. I went to EMI, or I went to CDP originally, but then went to EMI and then took courses and then got my degree. And then it just escalated because I fell in love with emergency management. There's not a lot of people who can say they love what they do. I fell in love with emergency management, and I love what I do. At every level I've done it. And my goal is transitioning from being the emergency manager that sits at the table to do the job, versus now I'm going to be the supportive role of the emergency managers to make sure that they are getting what they need and have the resources they need to do the job properly. And that's kind of where I feel like my calling is now. But I love emergency management, everything that it represents and that it does. But it does take an active role upon the individual, not only to get educated to do the job, but to do the job well. I mean, if you're doing the job and you are experienced, but you're not stepping out into the community and engaging the community and building anything more than what you currently have, you're not doing the job justice. You're not doing yourself justice, and you're damn well not doing justice to the organization in which you represent.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, I feel, and this is me speaking from what my calling is. I have a moral obligation to make sure that the people in this position, the people that do this, and the people that will drive this profession and the professionals forward are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Period. We have people. We can either be the light or the dark in someone's most worst day.
Yep.
And did we do everything we could to prepare them for that day? And after that day happened, are we doing everything we can to get them back to as whole as they can get? And if we're not, we need to not be doing the job.
Yeah. I think passion and love for the job is a big factor. And it's always good to hear when somebody kind of stumbles into the career. Oftentimes you see guys that, and I'll be honest, my perspective was I was going to retire as a firefighter, and then as a retirement gig, I was going to be an emergency manager. I sped up that process a little bit. Didn't retire from the fire service, but it's always really fun to see when somebody, and I hate to use the word, but stumbles into the career and then finds a passion for it, because that's when you really make change. When you have a heart and a passion for what you're doing, whether that is selling stuff for some company or working in the public safety field, or working in the political field, whatever the case may be. When you have a passion for it, that's when you actually are at your best. And it's really neat to see when people learn about this, because I think anybody who goes into emergency management, once they get a taste for it, once they see the impact that they can make, that's when I think the fire gets lit, really. I remember, and I've gotten several, and I love it every time I do, get letters from citizens that, just saying thank you, for what was going on and what we did, how much of an impact it made on their lives. Those kind of things, every time you get something like that in, it'll reignite the fire, and you want to charge harder to get to the finish line or get to where you need to be. So it's exciting to see that.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons too that the leadership angle is what I'm pushing so hard for when it comes to emergency management, because when it comes down to it, and this is kind of like a new direction I would like to take emergency managers, is that we need to become marketers. Yes. We need to market what we do, how we do it, why it's important. We influence the public and the people we serve in the organization or the government. We influence them to say, that is awesome. How do I get involved? Because that's what influence really is. It's one thing to tell them why you're important and justify why you exist. It's another thing to get others involved in what it is that you're doing. And I have lost count of the amount of individuals that, once I've got them involved, took off in their own direction of emergency management, or left to do emergency management from their previous job. If law enforcement and fire, you'd be surprised how many don't know what emergency management is and how they can do the job better, and actually fall in love with it when you explain it to them, or when they get just a little bit of taste of it, they're like, I want some more. Yeah. And it can be addicting.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I want to leave it with this has been a great discussion, but I want to bring it to you in your professional trainings and learnings that you've done. Is there one specific program out there that you'd like to give a plug to when it comes to emergency management or leadership?
I think there's three off the top of my head. So one is obviously EMI's professional education programs, whether that's the basic academy or all the way up to the executive academy. I think they do a really great job in bringing in experts in the field, whether that is experts in EM or experts in theory and leadership, bringing them in and providing an opportunity for people to learn and apply those theories in their real life. So I've always really admired EMI's efforts, and I think they've done a great job revamping programs and getting them available to people around the nation. The other, they've got a couple programs at the Naval Postgraduate School. One is the Emergent program, and basically that's an opportunity for somebody to come in. They take several classes and they identify a problem within their organization, and basically they create a capstone project to solve that problem. And then they can take that product back to their leadership and try and sell it to their leadership. So I think that's just a really impressive way to go about, taking a look at what are the problems within emergency management and how can we address them and tailor it to organization specific kind of issues. So I think that's a really great one. And then I will always plug my alma mater, Oklahoma State University. They have a top-notch master's degree program in fire and emergency management administration. Several of the instructors are just incredible researchers that have been in the field, and they have done the work, and they have talked to a large number of practitioners to really kind of hone the academic side of it. But I will always say this, go Pokes. So I always got to plug OSU.
Well, I'm an OU fan, and
I'm sorry,
but I ultimately can agree with you that OSU does have a great program when it comes to emergency management. But OU all the way, buddy. But you know what, Jeff, I just really appreciate the conversation. It's always great talking to you. Next time, let's not go so long before we have a conversation. I look forward to seeing you and coming to IEM if you get to go to that. For all those listening, International Association of Emergency Management Conference, they have it once a year. And we are both members of that, both certified emergency managers, and we're hoping to get to see each other at that. If not, it's wherever we can catch up again. If I can come visit you down in Durant, I will. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, talk to the viewers and listeners about this topic, which I feel is greatly needed, and we need to expand upon and elaborate upon in how we're doing it, why we're doing it, how it's important, and the individuals that are doing it itself. So I'm going to give you the last word before we say goodbye.
I appreciate the opportunity. I'm with you 100%. We've got to get the word out. We've got to get people to understand how the leadership theory really kind of drives a practitioner, and how it can change a program with the right information, the right people in the right place, and you will make some really impressive changes for your community, and getting some buy-in to hopefully mitigate and not have to deal with the emergency down the road. But it's always bound to happen. So excited to see where the career field is going. I have kind of watched it over the last decade, and I think we're seeing some great strides. And I'm really hopeful that we get some young folks into it. We've actually made an effort to reach out to our young tribal citizens and get them interested in. So inspiring that next generation is really what we're trying to do, and get them ready. So again, thank you, and looking forward to seeing you hopefully in November.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. And I just want to really touch on that real quick. The mentorship is invaluable. And I just one more thing that I appreciate that you're doing, brother. Yep. So thank you very much for that. Being mentors is no thing that you take on lightly. But making an active step to be mentor is amazing. So thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time today. I tell people the most valuable thing they have is their time. And thank you for sharing some with me. Let's go get better. Let's do it together. And I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Dan.